Yo, it's Tuesday, and we have the NCAA. We talking about sports top 10. Justin, where are you at, my boy?
Yo, good to be here with you on this Tuesday, on our third week of the college football.
Yes, week
Wtbs top 10.
Top 10, and yes, nonetheless, look who we have up there. Your UT Texas Longhorns. They were the big story coming out of this weekend. I think they have. I think your hair looks that way, bro, because of how much you were grabbing it and shaking it and going crazy because of that game. We're gonna get into that game later, but this is just gonna be a quick show. Justin loves his college football. He's a guru on the We Talking About Sports team. I'm Ron. He's Justin. Our other two boys aren't with us, Roland and Ben. Shout out to them. But as for now, let's just get straight into it. Justin does a top 10 every week. He had his top 10 last week, and we're going to see how it compares to this week's top 10. Justin, go ahead and let us have it, man. Hit us with it.
All right, so let's get into last week's top 10. And Ron, I want to talk about the vision we had in the top 10 last week.
You called it. You called it.
As you can see here, last week we were on it. The AP polls this week have Georgia 1, Alabama 2. Yeah. But we were a week ahead of things. We had the vision for it, and I'm pretty glad about that. The next thing you can see on this list is there was no Notre Dame in our top 10. Notre Dame goes, they pay $1 million to Marshall. Come play us. We'll pay you. We'll pay your buses. You know, this is a good deal for your school, everything like that along those lines. And they get beat down at home in South Bend. Not a good look, but for us, it's all right because we didn't even have them in the top 10.
I don't know what's the worst storyline for Notre Dame is that Netflix came out with a Manateo documentary, or you go and get beat by a ridiculously small school and you start off the year at 0-2 after being ranked number 5 coming into the season.
And now you have 3 losses with your head coach. You have not yet registered a win with this new head coach that you have.
Terrible.
So, man, it's not good for what's supposed to be a Power 5 team, but it's not a Power 5 because it's not in the conference, but everyone knows the name, brand, and recognition of Notre Dame.
Rudy.
So that's not a good look.
Rudy.
The other move here, as you can see, was Texas A&M being dropped to 7 last week. Not good news for Texas A&M. They play Appalachian State.
Who?
Appalachian State. I'm not even sure what North Carolina. I think that's where they're from. The Appalachian Mountains over there. They dropped the ball at home, 17-14. This is a team that paid $75 million to get that head coach from Florida State to Texas A&M. They gave him the bag, and he's got the same record that Kevin Sumlin had to start the career at 35-16 apiece. Ron, Appalachian State's offense ran 82 plays. Ask me how many plays Texas A&M ran Saturday.
Justin, how many plays did Texas A&M run on Saturday?
They ran 38 plays on offense. You're getting outplayed. You're rolling out a 2014 offense from Florida State at Texas A&M. How can you expect to win with a 2014 offense when you're in 2022? Jimbo's supposed to be the offensive guru, some quarterback whisperer of a coach. But is he? Is he producing the results? This is not acceptable for a program like A&M who joined the SEC, who was supposed to be high and mighty. They're not showing out. I'm just saying, if this was yesterday's segment when we introduced Panic or Gucci, A&M fans are hitting that panic button today. That's just my opinion, though, Ron. So,
besides Notre Dame and Texas A&M, anybody else that stood out to you from last week as far as your list goes here?
No. I mean, we're gonna see when we get to 5 through 1, we're gonna see some familiar names. You know, it's gonna be some shakeup more at 6 through 10 because some of the losses we saw. Upset weekend. Baylor goes down, Florida goes down, and we're gonna get into it. But let's get into that. In fact, 6 through 10. Last week we had Oklahoma 6, A&M 7, Baylor 8, 9 USC, 10 Florida. This week we see the shakeup that comes from the top 10 comes in the back half, and that's at 6 through 10. 10, we got Oklahoma State. They put on another win. I didn't have them initially in my top 10. That first game, they didn't look so good that Thursday night that they opened up. But when you go 2-0, you put up points, and defense is looking a little bit better. We're going to have them there.
All right.
Now
so
introducing.
Week 2, you have Florida at your number 10.
Yes, and they're gone.
3, so going into week 3, you knock them off your list, and you bring the OK State Cowboys up there at number 10.
Yes, and then we bring in Kentucky, who beat Florida. This is the second year Kentucky has gotten the best of Florida. Mark Stoops has been a better coach in the SEC, and we're seeing them more well-rounded. They're not just a basketball school anymore. They got a football program now. So we're going to show some honor to them at number 9 for Kentucky. Number 8, I'm going to put a little bit of a drop-off on Oklahoma. Didn't like the way they played. I think we know Oklahoma from the past, great offenses. But this year, with Brett Venables at coach, defensive coordinator for Oklahoma, moved to Clemson, then now back at Oklahoma as head coach. We've seen Oklahoma's defense stymie up a little bit. I think that's a good and positive direction for Oklahoma. So let's move them to number 8 for this week.
Yeah,
I think they're potential to drop some games. That's why I dropped them down a little bit.
All right. Well, nationally, they're still ranked number 7. They did play Kent State at home, won 33-3. So you were expecting more of a decisive win against a smaller team like Kent State.
Yes, exactly that case.
They didn't get upset like Texas A&M with App State. So they took care of their little small state school.
Yes, and the only reason I dropped them was because I'm more impressed with 7 and 6. That's the only reason. Okay. So 7, we got Arkansas. We saw what Arkansas was last year. They're a tough and physical team. They run the ball. Sam Pittman's their coach. He's an ex-offensive line coach. So the team has tenacity. The team is tough as nails. They're going to be physical in the SEC. I'd like them to make a chance to upset some of these bigger teams in the SEC. Not win out, not be in the playoff, nothing like that. But I feel like if you're going to see an upset this year, it's because Arkansas ran the ball and controlled clock and found a way to beat one of these teams. So I give them more shine this week, and that's the reason why I dropped Oklahoma to 8.
They did, going back to Arkansas, they played the Spencer Rattler South Carolina team.
Yes.
And they were up going into half, but they didn't score at all the third quarter, Arkansas. And it was about a 5 to 6 point game going into the fourth quarter. However, they come out and they put up 23 points in the fourth quarter to win 44-30 against South Carolina. So good job by Arkansas, man.
Yeah, so Arkansas has a pretty physical quarterback, KJ Jefferson. He's got size on him, but you know what I mean. And they ran six running backs on Saturday. So they're spreading the ball. They're getting physical. They're controlling the line. They're controlling the clock. And as you can see, they put up points in the SEC. That's the SEC team that they played, the South Carolina Gamecocks, and they put 44 points on them. So physical Arkansas team, I'm going to throw them some shine. But here's my biggest surprise.
I see
3 spots up. 3 spots up. USC at number 6. And I got to be honest with you, Ron. I don't personally like USC a lot, because of the rival, not rivalry, but we know the national championship game, the game of the century, as some people want to call it.
I feel like there's a personal vendetta.
There's a personal vendetta there. So I'm not a big USC fan, but I'll tell you what, college football is a lot more exciting when USC is relevant, and Texas is good. Sense. It just makes for a better experience as a college football fan when you have parity, when it's not just the Alabamas of the year every year, the Georgias every year. When you have teams that, hey, maybe they can make a run for it, that's exciting. USC, man, that offense, wow. Caleb Williams, a transfer from Oklahoma, has found his guy, Jordan Addison. Addison went for 7 catches, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns. His longest touchdown was 75 yards. This guy can take the ball and move it like Justin Jefferson did on Sunday. Yards after catch. He's Jerry Jeudy type. That's how good this kid is. And you expected that with Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma to coach at USC. Here's the thing that I also wanted to put him at 6, because the Pac-12 doesn't have a lot of pushback. There's not a lot of great teams in the Pac-12. USC could be poised to make a playoff run. I believe right now, as it stands, they are the best team in the Pac-12. So I'm already pushing them that high because I could possibly see them make the top 5 at some point in the year. I think in the AP poll they're at 7, Ron.
Yes, they are at 7 currently. USC?
No, they're at 10.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say 7. No, they're at 10. They're 41-28 against Stanford last week. Are you worried that they came out big in the first half? They put up 35 points. It was 35-14 going into the first half, and they only scored 6 points in the entire second half. The entire second half.
No, I'm not worried about USC's offense not scoring in that second half because we know what Lincoln Riley can do. If they wanted to turn up on Stanford, they could have extended that lead even more. 14 of Stanford's points came in the fourth quarter in garbage time. So in reality, you're looking at 41-14 instead of 41-28.
As far as Caleb Williams goes, any Heisman potential there for him?
Absolutely. And at the beginning of the year, he was part of our Heisman sprinkles to look at. Yes, he was. The other thing with the USC, the biggest surprise again continues to be the defense. We know Lincoln Riley for offense. We don't know him for defense. Yet again, another game goes by where they have 2 interceptions on defense, man. So that's like something to look forward to if you're a USC fan, is that now you have both sides of the ball rolling. I know USC fans, when they got Lincoln Riley over, they were like, hey, man, this is great. We're going to score points, but are we going to win games because defense is going to be irrelevant? That's not the case. USC's defense is back.
Are they back? Like Texas back or not?
No, because yet? Texas is not back. Texas was almost back, but you know,
we're gonna get into that at the tail end of the show. So y'all stay tuned because we're gonna get into some numbers for Texas next week as they have a big in-state rivalry with a school that you never would have thought to say Texas is gonna have a big in-state rivalry, but it's fairly new, but it will still be a rivalry. So at the end of the day here, from week 2 to week 3, you knock Florida off your top 10. You knock Baylor off your top 10. Texas A&M is completely off your top 10 also. Only ones that stayed on there were Oklahoma and USC, and you have both of those schools moving up. Bringing you.
And did you mention Baylor off the top 10 too?
Yeah, Baylor's off the top 10 as well. So, I mean, I like it. All your points are, well put, definitely relative. And just like you said, bro, you had Alabama 2 and Georgia 1 as of last week. So you predicted that shit and it happened. So props to you. Shout out to you.
Thank you for my flowers.
All right, so this was 10 through 6. This is we talking about sports top 10. So let's go to the top 5 and we'll bring it to you one by one.
All right, here we go. Moving in. No change here. Like I said, top 5, everybody wins out. There's not going to be a lot of movement. 5, Michigan. The thing to highlight about Michigan was they played Hawaii and they just romped through Hawaii. Yeah. We're talking about 42-0 at half, covering that spread. What we talked about at week 1, Ron,
56-10 was the final score.
Yeah. What we talked about week 1 was head coach Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. And I told you, he said, I don't know who my quarterback is. Week 1, I'm starting one. Week 2, I'm starting the other. Week 3, I'll have the name of the quarterback. He said it was biblical. It had biblical ties, biblical principles. The quarterback has been named for Michigan. It's J.J. McCarthy. I'm going to read you his stat line against Hawaii.
Go ahead.
11 for 12, 229 yards for 3 touchdowns.
And he only threw 12 times?
Yes, he only threw 12 times. Remember, Michigan runs the ball heavy, and they got 2 backs with CJ and Blake that can run it really well.
Out of those 12 passes, 2 of them were TDs, and he threw for over, 250 yards?
He threw for 229 yards for 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
And 12 passes. I mean, if he was in the NFL, that's a QBR rating that's top of the line. Right there.
It's 99.2. Yeah.
Come on.
So this guy is throwing a touchdown every 4 passes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he had the highest QBR of all college quarterbacks week 2. So good on him.
All right. So
he ends up getting the job.
Good choice to Harbaugh. It looks like he's made the right choice so far.
I think so. Right. Cade did get to play this game. Cade was efficient as well. He went 4 for 6 passing. But here's the kicker. He only had 26 yards in passing. That's 4.3 yards per attempt. Nowhere near the 19.1 yards per attempt McCarthy had. So pretty clear choice. McCarthy's the guy to go with. And good on Michigan for scheduling 2 opponents back to back where you can kind of assess your football team and decide who should be your starter. A lot of this stuff should have been, handled preseason, but Harbaugh knew what he was doing. He knew he had the time to make these choices, and good on him for knowing what it's in front of him.
And it's funny because that's what I said about another Harbaugh coach team in the NFL was the 49ers throwing Trey Lance out there against a team like the Bears, who you figured this might be a good measuring stick for him. And we kind of saw what happened there, but this is college. We'll stick to that. I just had to drop a little NFL in there. So number 5, they are ranked nationally at number 4, but you have them at number 5 in your top 10. Who do we got next, man, at number 4?
Well, that last reason why I keep them at 5, because at the end of the day, they're in the Big Ten. They're going to have to face that team up down south, which is Ohio State. One of them is going to beat each other and kick each other out of this top 4 scenarios. I think this year Ohio State gets back on the winning track and knocks them down. Last year, Michigan beat them up in that snow game. This year, I think Ohio State gets back on track. That's why I'm keeping them at 5. I'm trying to have that vision, that extended vision.
That QB vision?
Yeah.
That Mike Big roller coaster ride vision?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Who do we got next? You said, moving on to number 4, no change in the game. Clemson. This was not the easiest pick for me at 4. I was somewhat wanting to move them down. They played an FCS team. That's like a Division II that doesn't play in the playoffs. Like it's called Furman Paladins. They play like the North Dakota States. They're not part of that playoff. The top squads of college football. They only put up 35 points on them.
If you can compare it to basketball, they would go to the NIL tournament.
Yes, that's what they are. Or maybe not even they're NIU, that stuff.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
What's that other tournament? Because it's obviously the Final Four and then the NIL. And there's like another tournament that's like, wow, like why is it even relevant?
So
but I get you.
They beat Furman 35-12. DJ Ungale, he was more accurate, but the yardage per attempt was only at 8.6. He was 21 for 27. He had 2 touchdowns, still managed to throw a pick. So he's still turning the ball over.
Against Furman.
You can tell Dabo wants to keep him in the game, doesn't want to show Clay Klubnik too much. He only gave Klubnik a shot in the first quarter, like real late in the game, 4 attempts. They had him running the ball, killing the clock out. I think he doesn't want the fans to lose faith in DJ. We saw that game 1 when Cade came in. They were like cheering him on. They were standing up and clapping. I think Dabo's trying to minimize the locker room losing faith in DJ.
But again, he's still not susceptible, or he's susceptible to the big move?
I think Dabo's like stuck in his way about keeping DJ the third year guy there over the freshman. Here's the thing. Part of the offense that's bothering me from Dabo is this whole Will Shipley thing. You got one of the better running backs in the country. You only gave him 10 carries still against Furman. Let the boy go. Let him run the rock, I don't like that personally. And then you're running your quarterback 5 times. Like he goes down, then what? Like it's not a good look. You should be able to power through Furman, put up 40 on him at least,
Is this a preseason NFL mentality though? Are you not going to want to have your superstar running back out there for a long time? Even though, like you said, you did run your quarterback 5 times. Is that another thing where you kind of want to put him on ice for a little bit?
I think they just know that they got depth and they're going to play depth. But like you're not playing teams that are the big hitters. You're in the ACC. The best teams you're playing are Wake Forest and North Carolina State, Miami down the road. Yeah, you got Notre Dame, but Notre Dame is looking bad right now. Put your guy in. You have the depth to run another guy if he goes down. Like, let him ball. Let him get into midseason form against a Furman team. That's just my opinion. I really wanted to move them down, but I just couldn't. They're complacent at 4. We're keeping them at 4.
All right, who do you got out? And you're rounding out your top 3.
3. We got Ohio State. Ohio State. They played Arkansas State. They were able to move the ball. The only thing is we didn't see no Jackson Smith and Jigba. We didn't see no Cameron Fleming on the receiving core. It's still the same guys. Marvin Harrison Jr., You talked about seeing him last year go off against Utah in the Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
He had, 3 or 4 touchdowns that game. He had 3 tutties this week. So the depth is there. Ohio State's not going to have any problems when it comes to moving the ball in offense. TreVeyon Henderson got back, almost had 100 yards off of just 10 carries. Wow. There's no problem for Ohio State on offense. I couldn't move them up, even with Alabama's horrible performance week 2. I had to keep them there.
Surprised because you are the big Buckeye guy here.
The thing that still holds me back with Ohio State is we just know that defense is not up to snuff.
But the team that they played put up 12 points. Is that because of the caliber of the team that they were playing?
It's Arkansas State. I mean, that's the Sun Belt, I believe, or I'm not sure exactly what conference that is, but I believe that's Sun Belt. So that's a team that, you're going to run the train on for all intents and purposes. That's not a team that's a quality opponent. So without, if they would have said, okay, they put up 60 on them and they really kept them down under 10, I would have said, yeah, move them up. They got the swag. They're up there, but they're complacent. That's not enough to move them up.
You're speaking on their defense, but they did only allow 10 points to Notre Dame. But does that go to show with Notre Dame's 2 losses that maybe Notre Dame wasn't
as good as we thought?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So they gave up 10, they gave up 12, but you say there's still a question mark for Ohio State, which is why you couldn't move them up.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's move over to number 2. Like I said, not a lot of movement in the top 5 this week. We got Alabama. But the best part about this one, Ron, is that we had the vision last week to move into number 2. Even have to worry and wait till this week. As a Texas fan, Ron, this game 20-19. It was a little frustrating as a Texas fan. We saw the first quarter. We saw what Quinn Ewers was. We saw for, the 15 minutes in that first quarter, he looked like the guy. I mean, he looked like the guy that was going to bring Texas back. He was throwing routes open before they were even open. He looked impressive as all get out. Bijan, he was better, in my opinion, receiving as a receiving back than he was rushing the ball. He had 21 carries, 57 yards. Not the most impressive running performance, but Bijan had 3 receptions for 73 yards. So way better performance receiving the ball. Xavier Worthy balled out on Alabama. Alabama's defense, it doesn't look like the defense of the old. Did you kind of notice that?
I would say that they're DBs, man. I mean, when you have the DB fraternity that comes from that university,
yes,
and then you had
Minka's, Tony Brown's,
and then you get Texas's backup quarterback coming in, and he was still throwing dimes to some receivers, and that's how Texas was moving the ball. So that's the only thing that was, a little bit shaky to me. Their defensive end did have plays late in the game. He got a stupid personal foul penalty when the runner was already down and he hit him as he was getting back up. So you could see the frustration coming out of them. But to answer your question about the dominance and the size of the usual Alabama defense, no, you could clearly see that it's way different this year.
So the other thing that really highlights for me for Alabama this past weekend was discipline. Nick Saban's teams have discipline. They don't commit penalties.
There was a lot of laundry on the field.
There was so much laundry. And the most disappointing part of it for when you're looking at Alabama, the laundry came from Will Anderson Jr., their captain linebacker, who's been anchoring that defense for the past 2 years. That's not the guy you expected to get flagged up. I know Saban's going to want to correct that coming into this week. I expect him to fully correct it. He's not a guy that sits on laurels by any means. He knows what needs to be fixed. He has UL Monroe coming up this week. That's a team that you can make those adjustments against. That's a team you can afford to make some mistakes because you're going to end up beating them anyway. So, lucky for Alabama, they scheduled a non-conference opponent, and I believe they even have them at home. They do. They have them at home. So, back to Titletown for Alabama. They'll be fine for this week.
One of the other things that I took away was Nick Saban looks really fucking old. Like he's finally starting to look his age. You're
starting to see the hair color come off his hair. It's getting painted and it's fading.
The wrinkles, on the face, and he doesn't look like he does in those progressive commercials with Primetime. Is it progressive? Or is it Geico? No, Aflac.
He's looking every bit of 70.
Yeah, in those Aflac commercials, dude looks like he's 50. You know,
the CGI is looking right for him.
In TV commercials and, you know, movies, looking about 15 years younger. But he looks like he's done. And not that it's Nick Saban. He's the greatest coach ever. But does it get to a point where you're just kind of like, oh, man, do I want to put in that little extra effort at the end of the day like I did 3 years ago or 5 years ago? Or do I just say, you know what, we're still Bama. We'll get there at the end of the year, and that's all that I need to focus on is just getting there and not being so disciplined the entire year. Maybe meetings are a little shorter. You know, you're having 1 a day practice instead of 2 a days. Is that a little reflection? Is Bama's team performance on the field a reflection of Saban? I guess I could say.
No, I don't believe so, Ron, because I could see that for a lot of teams, but I don't see that for Nick Saban. That dude is most competitive coach I've ever seen.
Giving him his flowers, roll tide.
Yeah,
roll tide.
And I think he gets it corrected this week. I don't think it takes long to fix these issues for him. I think they got to work on that offensive line still. They tried to repair it from last year. It still struggled a little bit against Texas. We were able to get to Bryce Young quite a few times, but he still carries the Heisman quarterback there. That last drive, you know, driving the ball down, get the touchdown, burning 0 timeouts. That showed Heisman material, Heisman performance for him.
Bama
I think they're going to be fine.
Bama handled the 2 situation way better than the Broncos did last night. I will give them that. But moral of the story for this game to me was just what you said. Bryce Young, you have the best player in college football, arguably coming off the Heisman win on your team. And in the fourth quarter, when you thought he was going to get sacked and the game was going to be over, you know, he manipulates himself out of the sack. He makes the pass for the completion, and that's what was, you know, eventually the game-winning drive. So you had the best player on the field. He made it happen. The touchdown to the back of the end zone rolling to his left was ridiculous, man.
Cross-body throw.
Dude scrambling. I mean, he has time to turn his hips, make the throw sidearm. I mean, he's not there at all, but that was some Patrick Mahomes level play right there. I mean, props to him. He was the best player on the field, man.
You know That's what's running through his veins?
Let me know. Let us know.
Nice. When you do something like that in that big time decision game like that,
yes,
you got ice in your veins, bro.
Huge, man. But all right, that's enough about Bama. We're still gonna get to them. Well, actually, we're gonna get to the team that they played in that game later. So I'm sure you're gonna want to talk about them a little bit more. But finish it off. Hit us with your number 1 for week 3.
Well, we see 5 through 2. Obviously, number 1 Georgia, and again, another thing that wasn't the most impressive win by Georgia this week. They played Samford, also Bulldog mascot. Ron, if you can look up where Samford plays from, I'm not even sure.
They're not worth looking up right now, man.
At the end of the day, Georgia went in. They played at home. They took care of business, 33-0. The defense is not giving up points. Stetson Bennett, 24 for 34, 300 yards, bro. Only 1 touchdown to show for it, but he was averaging 8 yards a throw. Guy's not making any mistakes. Last year, we saw him as a game manager. So far, through 2 games this year, we're seeing him a little bit better than a game manager now. At the end of the year, if he keeps playing like this,
are you going to crown him? If you're going to crown him, crown him.
On one of those Saturday nights in New York, talking about a Heisman. And that's something that no one had in their mouth at the start of the preseason college football. Stetson Bennett for Heisman. But it's going to be very hard to deny this man with games like that.
Are we sprinkling? Are we sprinkling?
I'm not sprinkling just for my angst and hate against Georgia right now.
Well, usually best player on the best team has the best chance.
Yes.
If Georgia is number 1, you go to Georgia, you look at their list of Heisman candidates, and you go to the quarterback situation. So maybe it is worth a sprinkle. But talking about defenses, you were talking about the USC defense. Georgia plays out Oregon, 11th ranked nationally last week. Gives up 3 points. Samford, super small school. We all get it. But they did what they were supposed to do, not allow 1 single point. They've allowed 3 points in the first 2 weeks, and they have, it looks like, to be the South Carolina Gamecocks next week.
Yes, they have South Carolina next week.
Early game, 11 as well. So let's see what happens there. I mean, Georgia can be dominant, and the Heisman candidate possibly can come out of Georgia this year.
Yeah, so offensively, the Sanford Bulldogs are only able to put up 130 yards total on that Georgia defense. So Georgia pretty much held them down, man. I mean, they just said, y'all not getting past a certain point and you're not putting that ball in the end zone. And they managed to keep it that way. Shit. Very impressive. You're supposed to beat teams like that. That's what you're supposed to play when you're playing the Furmans of the world. I'm talking about y'all, Clemson.
All right, man. Well, that rounded it out. That was Justin's top 5, top 10.
No movement this week.
4 week
on the top 5.
No movement. We'll see what happens next week. But before we go, we have a huge game coming up. We got
huge for some, especially in the pod though.
Yeah, especially in our group here. Oh, it's so sad to see, man. Mr. Ewers, quarterback for UT. He won't be playing this game, obviously, because he suffered that injury. Some say it was a dirty play. Some say it wasn't. You can be the judge. But either way, the Texas Longhorns and the UTSA Roadrunners. Yes, I did say UTSA Roadrunners. They have a football team, ladies and gentlemen. They will be playing the Texas Longhorns this Saturday. We're going to talk about this game because of the predictions. It's something that we never shy away from here. So you have an 11-point spread in favor of the Longhorns and an over-under of 61.5. I'll go first because I'm going to let the shock come at the very end of the show. All right. So let's put my prediction up there. I have under 61.5. Reason being, we saw what this Texas defense did to Alabama. 19 points. And then you have a team like UTSA coming in. They should at least not score as much as a number 1, number 2 ranked team in the nation. On the other side, University of Texas offense. We know the starting quarterback's done. Second string quarterback started hobbling pretty much the second drive. He has some ankle issues. Roland mentioned off the show. They have some trouble at running back as far as a little bit of an injury there. So we have a team that's not 100%. And coming off an Alabama win, they're going to be banged up. They're going to be bruised. They're going to be hyped because it's an in-state rivalry game. But those legs might start getting tired in the second or third quarter instead of the fourth quarter. This is why I'm going unders. I know UTSA has a stud on the other side in quarterback. But remember, we talked about it also, the DBs, the defensive ends, the defensive backs just being so big for the Longhorns. I mean, not just the way that they played on the field against Bama, but the size. These are some of the biggest guys that I've seen on the sidelines in Texas for a while. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. If you're Texas, you don't want to throw that game against Bama to waste, I feel. You almost won it. You're on a super big high, and you don't want to go against UTSA and pull out a dud either. I think they might be a little bit smarter. They might not risk as much, especially not with their starting quarterback out. So they'll play the field position game. I think it's going to be a grind in the trenches, and it's definitely going to stay under 61.5.
All right.
So that's my prediction. I'm not picking a side because I got homies on both sides. You know, Wally and Marky, we know they're UTSA till they die. Got some other UT Longhorn fans like my man here who's about to speak. And I will just let you say it because I can't believe these words are coming out of your mouth. But go ahead.
Here it is. UTSA plus 11 on the spread. Here are my reasons. We got that big Alabama game. You went and hit a super high. You were right there with one of the best teams in the country. What happens when you get that high, Ron? What follows the next day?
A big cruda, a.k.a.
a hangover.
We're
going to have some hangover from that big game. The line opened at plus 13.5. It's down to plus 11. I personally would probably buy it back to 13.5. You don't lose a lot when you do that on this game. Quarterback, Quinn Ewers, hurt. Ron said Hudson Card, ankle, hobbling. This week we talked about Malik Murphy, the 5-star recruit out of California. Won a state title over there. Sark was asked, will he be ready? Nope.
Damn.
So no Sark started talking about possibly 3 QBs being out. And we're going to run some Wildcat packages with Roshan Johnson. Roshan came out of high school, was a quarterback initially, now plays running back for the Longhorns. He didn't want to wait. anything. He wanted to get on the field. He said, I'll switch positions to running back. So he can throw the ball. But when you're having to use a running back for the last 3 years as your main quarterback in Wildcat packages, that means it's going to be low scoring.
Okay.
Really like Ron's play at under 61.5. And I just think with the hangover we have, Bijan Robinson, hurt shoulder, our good running back. We lost Deshaun Jameson. He might be day-to-day for this game as well. Our best corner. With all the injury lists and the injury bug piling up on Texas, everything, when you factor that hangover into it as well, I just don't see us blowing out UTSA this weekend. I think we keep it close. I think Longhorns get the win because at the end of the day, the talent on the field will be different. But Frank Harris and UTSA, through 2 games this year, have kept it close with Houston. And if it wasn't for last week against Army or Navy, whoever they played, they only lost by 3. So they're keeping games close.
That Houston game was insane. I mean, they played a hell of a game, man. I like that our picks somewhat correlate here as well. Usually when it's it's an unders game, you kind of go with the spread for the underdog. So great call, Just. Oh, there's Pops giving you the.
That's a big surprise that he's not roasting me for going UTSA plus 11.
You notice how he gave you the good comment here after you said, I think the Longhorns are gonna win, and he didn't just hit you with right away. Like,
I softened the blow. That's the thing. I softened the blow on him. Like, I'm not gonna just chop the hand off.
I mean, I thought he was gonna. I mean, his only
scorched earth,
his son. I mean, wow.
Yeah, he's a supporter. He knows what's up. But yeah, UTSA plus 11. Personally, I will buy the points back that they opened at all the way up to 13.5. I think you're real comfortable at that number. And I think it's like minus 135 if you do all the way back up to 13.5.
Yeah, we could pull a Roland here. Roland loves to tease.
You could do that too, Ron.
I mean, if you tease this to possible plus 18, plus 19, you should be sitting pretty. The game is at 7 o'clock. Everybody's going to be lit. I heard it's going down in New Braunfels. So shout out to all the homies that are going up there to watch the game, have some fun, drink some beers for us, and let's cash our bets. But that's going to wrap it up for Justin. We talking about sports top 10 college game day. I don't know. Anything else that you got to say, Justin? That was a hell of a show, a hell of a breakdown. What else do we have coming up on the roster for the week?
Tomorrow, me and Ben will have tap hour, talking some MMA. Not to talk about the new fights coming up next weekend, but to talk about what happened last Saturday. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for us, we didn't have a podcast before because of some of the shakeup we saw. Yeah. Everybody who was supposed to fight ended up fighting new opponents. We said, hey, we'll scrap that. We'll talk about the results instead. Mm-hmm. And we like the results. We like the card. We'll talk about it. That's what it comes down to. Short pod tomorrow, just talking about what's the future for Nate Diaz. I mean, he said possibly out of the UFC. Does that mean the big boxing fight with the social media guy, one of the Paul brothers? What does that entail? We'll be talking about that tomorrow.
Yeah, nobody's going to want to take him on because Nate will take it serious and knock him the hell out in the first 30 seconds. We also have the fantasy mailbag. That's open all week up until Sunday morning, Saturday night. But if you can get them in early so we can get yours up there, we can talk about it on our Sunday show. For sure, guys, every Sunday, 10 a.m. Central Time, we do our podcast shows. We cover fantasy mostly going into the week. Obviously, we do our predictions, but it's a big fantasy show. So getting your fantasy mailbag, who do you think you should start? Who do you think that you should sit? Fantasy studs, fantasy duds, your matchups. So hit us up all week on the fantasy mailbag on our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and show us some love, bro. We appreciate it. And thanks for watching. That's going to wrap it up for us today.
Peace. All right, peace.